Hi, my name is Matthew. I am a fourth year medical student and I just finished a month-long rotation with an endocrinology clinic. Endocrinologists are doctors that work on diseases that are imbalances essentially of hormones, whether it be from the pituitary, thyroid, parathyroid, your adrenals, your pancreas, such as diabetes, or even diseases of the bone. And one of the doctors I was working with was commonly seeing patients that had trouble with weight loss. And so typically someone who had already struggled trying to lose weight in different manners or with different diets or however they tried would be referred by their primary care physician to this endocrinologist. One of the things he's collected over the years working with these patients is the number one tip that they would give to someone else trying to lose weight. And so I thought I'd share that list with you today that he was able to share with me. So some of these things might seem kind of drastic. However, some of them you may find helpful. So typically what I saw was that a patient would be offered the ability to see different specialists. Besides their endocrinologist, they would be offered to see a behavioral therapist, a sleep medicine specialist, a dietitian. They'd be offered to see an exercise physiologist, and even a bariatric surgeon. So I have the list here in front of me. One person says, keep a detailed food and exercise diary and bring it with you to your appointment with your dietitian. That makes a lot of sense because you're going to go meet with your dietitian and the first thing they're going to ask you is say, okay, how do you eat? What do you do? How do you grocery shop? What kind of things do you cook? And you don't want to be like, get a good idea of what you ate for the past 2 weeks without trying to be like, oh, let me not put my cheesecake on here because I'm trying to look healthy. No, be very honest. This is your health. Who cares what the dietitian thinks? They're not going to judge you. They work with people and they're just going to do their best to help you understand the science behind how changing your diet can change your life. The next dietary one is limit sugary beverage intake to less than 12 ounces daily. So 12 ounce would be like a one can. Now, that goes for any sugary beverage. So that doesn't just include soda, that includes juice. I don't care if it's natural juice, whatever. That's just sugar and no fiber. It also goes for milk, alcohol, sweet teas, shakes, and smoothies in addition to that as well. One is limit restaurants to no more than once weekly. So that's obviously a lot easier during coronavirus. However, that is something that typically, if you don't plan out your next day and you're someone who has a tight schedule and you commute and you have to drop your kids off at work and you didn't think to pack your lunch, you're going to be eating out. The next one is no deep fried foods or gravies if possible. If you can slowly cut those out and limit, I don't believe in restricting a certain food group. Next one is limit intake of cheeses and red meat to once weekly. Okay, so that works for some people. Some people will go on a vegetarian diet or maybe even a vegan diet, and you're going to lose weight. That's understandable. However, I'm not a big believer again in restriction of one certain food group totally. So I think in moderation is what they're saying, and especially someone who, maybe their red meat options were burgers from fast food joints, which is going to be a lot less healthy than, a piece of grass-fed meat. Next one is eat 2 fruits and or vegetables with each meal. That's a great way to get in fiber. I would say eating 2 fruits with each meal, like some people say, oh, there's too much sugar in fruit. There's a lot of fructose, whatever. If you're getting your sugar from fruit, that's a whole lot better than candy or sodas or cereals or anything like that. So I like that, especially having more vegetables. I definitely think it's a lot easier to get our fruits in. Fruits taste in general a lot sweeter, a lot tastier, a lot more dessert-like than vegetables. So really work on getting those vegetables in. Next one is choose a good source of protein at meals, followed by vegetables and fruits, and finally starchy foods, only if you have room. So that's a good idea. I mean, if you're preparing your meal, you're going to prepare all of those if you want to prepare all of them. But if let's say you're at a potluck dinner at a friend's house or something and you have some options of what to eat, maybe don't fill up the whole half of your plate with a bunch of rice or a pasta dish or bread or something like that. Maybe start off with filling up your plate with, okay, there's like a good broccoli, some asparagus, or if there's a salad, fill up at least half your plate with salad. Maybe put some, if there's any sort of good protein source, put that on top. And I'm not talking just fish, chicken, or any sort of red meat. I'm talking, you can also put, like, if there are lentils, any sort of beans. All right, next, drink a full glass of water before each meal. Aim to get at least 48 to 60 ounces of water per day. I'm a huge fan of drinking water. I think you should be drinking water all day long. I think when people feel thirsty and they reach for a soda or they reach for any other beverage other than water, your body's not going to end up not being thirsty. You have to drink water in order to not be thirsty. And I think the idea with what they're saying is drinking a full glass of water before each meal is so that basically expands the stomach a little bit. Now, you want to be careful with doing this as a way to not eat as much. You want to know how much you're eating. And this is a good idea if you're feeling like really hungry and if you have a bad habit of binging or something like that. It's a good idea to drink a full glass of water, and maybe you'll eat a little bit less. However, this is that piece of advice is a little bit that can mess with like the mental health side of things if you're doing little tricks like that to play on your body to not eat as much. I think in general, if your body's hungry, you need to eat. Use a salad plate for meals. Wait at least 15 minutes before second servings. I think that's a great piece of advice. I think not sitting down with the full amount of food that you cooked right in front of you is a great idea. Maybe leave the food in the kitchen, right? And you fill up the small plate, go walk over to the dining table, sit down or wherever you eat, sit down and eat, and then wait there for 15 minutes, right? Maybe read a book, or if you're with other people, talk to them. But you'll notice that it takes 15 to 30 minutes for your satiety to kick in, so to where you feel full. Next one is try to only eat at the table. So that's the same idea, right? So not in a car or in front of a TV or computer. So that's really good for people that are binge eating. So it's really easy to eat in front of a TV and you're eating out of a bag and you didn't put it in a plate. If you're going to end up eating half the bag of chips and then you're like, oh crap, and you have no idea how much you just ate. And it was probably a lot of calories. The next one is avoid snacking between meals. Now, some people will say, snacking is a good idea because you're not going to feel so hungry at dinner that you're going to overeat. I think that there are different ways to do this. So I wouldn't say that that's a great piece of advice. If you have a handful of nuts that you put in a small piece of Tupperware that you take to work, I think that's a fine snack for the middle of the afternoon, especially if that's going to keep you from binging later. Next is do not eat after 9 p.m. I think at least 2 hours before you go to bed is a good idea. It's a good idea to eat a healthy, full meal, not skimping on your dinner, and end up being super hungry before bed and going in for some snacks that, again, are not portioned out. Sugar-free drinks are okay. I don't think sugar-free drinks are great. However, if it's getting you actually off of sugary drinks and you're trying to taper off or something, I think it's an okay option. You want to be careful about drinking all these sugar-free drinks. We don't really know what's in them. Next one is do not grocery shop when hungry, and plan your meals and snacks ahead of time. And make a list and stick to this list. Avoid purchasing comfort foods like chips, breads, and sweets. All right, so a lot of good advice there. Basically, the whole idea of that is planning out what you're going to do in terms of grocery shopping, planning out how you're going to make your meals. Next one is, now a non-diet related one, sleep. So sleep is very important. Try to get at least 7 hours per night. This person says go to bed at night if you are hungry. Interesting. Okay. This worked for them, going to bed at night if you are hungry. So I guess, maybe it's 11 p.m. They're starting to get hungry again. They're starting to have those cravings. I'm more a fan of eat a good dinner so that you can go to bed not hungry, even if you're intermittent fasting, because I think it's harder to fall asleep, but maybe some people can do it. Next one is aim for a total calorie goal of less than X per day. And remember that there are 7 days in a week. So I think the idea of counting calories is a good place to start if you have tried other things, if you have tried different diets or whatever it may be. I think it's a good idea to understand how many calories you are eating. So before you start cutting out certain things or changing your habits, you should take note for maybe a week and really try to see how many calories you're eating in a day and count everything that you're having. Everything from the cooking oil that you're using, to every single beverage that you're consuming, every single alcoholic beverage you're consuming, every snack. Try to figure out how much you're eating typically, and you might be surprised you're eating 2,500 to 3,000 calories in a day, and maybe even 4,000 on a Saturday because, well, you had 3 drinks with some friends and you had cheese dip and a bunch of chips that night in addition to your meal out. And then also at lunch, well, you forgot to bring lunch. It's Friday, and your lunch on Friday, they like to bring donuts to the workroom, and you had a donut and a half, and all of a sudden you're at 4,000 calories on a Friday or Saturday. And so I think it's a good idea to know how many calories you are consuming. However, people can also kind of go overboard with this. They can become too restrictive, and they're obsessed with knowing, like, I need to know how much calories is in this or that. I think it's a good idea to know how to eyeball something and say, okay, that's about 100 calories. I think MyFitnessPal is my personal favorite app that I use. I think remembering that there are 7 days in a week is really important, because when you think about that Saturday where you had 4,000 calories, you can't beat yourself up over that. You need to make sure your weekly total is whatever your calorie per day is, times 7. If you go over 4,000, well, maybe the next 2 days you go a little bit under. Not starving yourself, but just going a little bit under your goal to try to even out your weekly average. Try to get at least 2.5 hours of exercise total per week. I think that's a great piece of advice. I think exercise is extremely underrated. Exercise is extremely important for our brain health. It does move our metabolism. Literally, it makes people poop when they go for their morning run, right? So, in a lot of ways, I think that looking at it as 2.5 hours total per week can make it to where you say, oh, I'm going to put it off till later in the week, right? So I'd be careful with looking at it like that. So I would look at it as I need to get 20 minutes per day, at least 20 minutes per day. And if you're feeling good one day, push it to an hour. Do more exercise. That's great. If you have time on the weekends and your kids are at the park and you're just sitting there at the bench, make that active time for you. Why don't you go ahead and do 100 squats? Or let's say you start off with 20, right? The next week you work your way up to 40 and then 60 after that. And you work your way up until you're doing 200 squats while your kids play for 30 minutes, right? People that say they don't have time, I think you can find 20 minutes throughout the day if it's important to you. So figuring out what other things you're wasting your time on is a good idea. I hope you're doing squats right now watching this video. Next one is complete and send salivary cortisol test. Okay, well, now we're getting into the medical stuff. This is the end of this is a copy and pasted from the physician. He sent me an email. So that one, not so much. However, there can be hormonal reasons why you have gained weight. It's people with Cushing disease. Their adrenals are secreting too much cortisol, which increases fat deposition in certain places, whether it be a dorsal fat pad or could be they have a rounder face. These patients will typically require medical intervention, and even though they've been eating well and doing all these things, maybe they'll lose weight. Or someone's hypothyroid. That means your bowels are slow, you're constantly cold, you're losing hair, or your hair is brittle, or gaining weight even though you're trying to exercise, and you feel very tired and you're not even eating that much and you're gaining weight. That could be a problem with your thyroid. However, I think it's really important to not write off, oh, I probably have some sort of hormone disorder or something like that, and not make any changes. I saw this one patient that came in who was clinically obese, and she was, when we asked her, okay, what do you think is the reason why you're having trouble losing weight? She's like, well, I think I have something with my cortisol, I think I have something wrong with my hormones. But when we got into like what she ate, it was all frozen pizzas. She didn't cook anything, she didn't do any sort of exercise. So I think it's really important to understand and be real with yourself. Okay, am I actually eating well? Have I actually exercised? Am I actually getting enough sleep? Am I drinking enough water? Eating less sugary or drinking less sugary drinks? If you're genuinely doing all those things and not losing weight, then there is a question of could there be some sort of hormone disorder? So that's all for now. Sorry, that was very long. Took a long time to go through that list. overall, some good advice from people that have lost weight and have worked with an endocrinologist.